now it's my pleasure to introduce to you your speakers for today. Rosalie Calarco comes to us from the AARP, North Carolina, where she works as the Associate State Director of Advocacy and Outreach for the coastal region of North Carolina. She is a Wilmington native who received her Bachelor of Social Work from the University of North Carolina in Wilmington and received her Master's of Social Work from the University of Georgia. She has practiced macro-level social work for her entire career. 17 years of her career was spent working for a U.S. Congressman and U.S. Senator handling congressional casework in the areas of education, Medicare, and military and veterans affairs. Rosalie has served on the National Association of Social Workers North Carolina Chapter Board for 5 years, and she's currently the president. She resides in Wilmington, North Carolina with her husband, 2 children, and 3 dogs. And Brooke, did you stand and wave? Rosalie, did you stand and wave? Okay, thanks. Okay, Brooke Vallaly is the program manager with the Alzheimer's Association Eastern North Carolina chapter. She's responsible for implementing the chapter's volunteer power delivery strategy, developing sustainable strategic community partnerships, and increasing awareness and education of Alzheimer's and other related dementias in 27 eastern and coastal North Carolina counties. That's a lot. She was invited to serve on the New Hanover County Advisory Council to address disparities in hospice and palliative care access among the county's most vulnerable populations. Brooke is the Education Community Chair of the Dementia Partners Coalition, a team of local organizations in New Hanover, Brunswick, and Pender counties collaborating to meet the needs of individuals and families living with the challenge of dementia. Brooke is a Greenville native. She graduated from East Carolina University with a BA in Communications. Brooke has worked in marketing, media, healthcare, and nonprofit sectors. She currently resides in Wilmington with her husband and daughter and enjoys spending time at the beach, going to concerts, and tailgating for ECU sports. So please welcome our speakers for today.
Thank you for having us today. Like Barbara said, I'm Rosalie Calarco, and I am with AARP, and I was very impressed by the selection of programs y'all have already had this year. A lot of things that AARP actually works on as well. One of our biggest missions is to help people age in place, so I really enjoyed the fact that the NEST mission vision is similar to that as well. As you can see, we are going to be talking about brain health today. As you age, Brooke will speak a little bit to Alzheimer's and some of the brain health things that is very helpful in that to help with hopefully not, taking your risk factors for Alzheimer's down as well. But as you can see, there's kind of 7 things up here, the best ways to love your brain. Of these, if you do any of these activities, raise your hand. I'm hoping everybody's going to be raising their activity. I mean, we're in here socializing, learning about new things. I will just challenge you all while we're going through our presentation to think about if there's something you hear or learn about that's new to your brain health. That I would challenge you to just pick one thing and do that and just see if you don't have a difference in your brain health altogether.
Okay, good. So before we get started with some of the information that we're going to hear, I like to put this slide up here because all of these are recommendations steeped in research and things that science and healthcare have learned over the many years. So this kind of level sets some of that information. The first one is clinical trial versus study. Those words are often used interchangeably, and they're pretty close, but they are a little bit of difference. So a clinical trial will study a new intervention around prevention, disease, cures, things like that, and then a clinical study involves things with people. So there could be a little bit of difference in that. When we're talking about modifiable risk factors are meant for large groups. So, when we think about exercise, we know that exercise is healthy. I mean, yes, you can get injured, but it would be impossible to do a study about exercise long-term. That means some people would have to give up exercise. So some things like that are just meant for a larger group, and not every prevention strategy is going to be studied in those larger impacts. And modifiable risk factors, this is really what the program's about. So if we think about it, X, Y, and Z. So you can do everything right for X to be healthy and age in place and age well, but the outcome, unfortunately, could be that you may not. You could have an accident. You could do all of the right things, and it doesn't mean that you'll get the preferred outcome. On the flip side, somebody in your family, I know I had a great uncle like this, the little, the scoundrel of the family that ate fried chicken and drank bourbon and smoked cigars and never worked out, and he lived to be in his 90s. So sometimes when we're talking about these modifiable risk factors, everybody is different, but we're talking about on a larger scale for most people. And then in current evidence and the gold standard, when we talk about the gold standard in research, that's things like the more people that you have, the longer the study or trial would go on, and randomization. So some things that we'll talk about may have claims or evidence. The more research that we provide is based off of the gold standard, which means that it's kind of check the box on these things a little bit. And then finally, the current evidence with it being based on studies. We have all these studies, but just like we talked about with the modifiable risk factors, you can't necessarily say A plus B equals C, and if anybody's helping their grandchildren or great-grandchildren learn this new Common Core math, you understand that they're just not teaching A plus B equals C anymore. So that's why we use words like association, suggest, may show, might protect, because out of every, when we see the commercials on TV and then you're like, why would I take this? Because they have to list out every side effect that could happen, even though for a larger or the intended or larger group population, it may be the best thing. Sometimes there are going to be things that are not great for people, and that's why we don't have those stronger words and words more like suggest or may show. So we're going to remember these items for the end of the program. So we have banana, sun, and chair. So don't write them down, but just remember them throughout the program, okay?
No cheating. No one write it down. Won't see anybody writing.
So we got to talk about the brain because it's the brain health, and it is the control center of the body. It tells us to breathe. It affects our hypertension. It tells us right foot, left foot. It helps with our personalities and decision makings. And there are over 100 billion nerves or nerve cells, and they create, if you think like a big tree, basically, that's within the brain. And then that within the branches, these are the pathways which the signals create our memories, thoughts, and feelings, and then our basic functions as well, too. And so many of the diseases there are other diseases that affect the brain other than Alzheimer's specifically, but it is the biggest culprit because it leads to the brain tissue loss or shrinking, again affecting more functions. A healthy adult brain actually weighs about 3 pounds, and then a brain that's been impacted by dementia can weigh about 2 pounds. So if we think about ladies, remember the 90s infomercial? Here's 5 pounds of fat, here's 5 pounds of muscle, what do you want? Or Oprah Winfrey wheeling out the wagon when she lost all the weight. It doesn't seem like a big difference, but we're talking about a third less capacity towards the end. So that's what's happening is the brain is shrinking overall as it's being impacted. So then that leads us to the brain and the heart are connected. So basically what's good for the brain is good for the heart. What's good for the heart is good for the brain. And that's because every time your heart pumps, it's feeding your brain. That's where it's getting your nutrients. So if you think about it in math terms, which is not my strong suit, if your heart is not at 100%, how is your brain going to be at 100%? Because that 20 to 25%, that's going to become smaller as the capacity for your heart is in there. So that's why we talk about this connection between them. And in fact, in most autopsies, about as much as 80% of people that have Alzheimer's disease that have an autopsy or donate their brain also have cardiovascular disease. So this could be the key to understanding why some people develop plaques and tangles in the brain, which is the hallmark of the Alzheimer's disease, but then not necessarily develop Alzheimer's. So we're looking at those things that are in the brain. Are they present in the brain without cognitive decline, unless if there's cardiovascular disease involved? So again, not a perfect science, but some aspects in there that are being studied. And Alzheimer's is not a normal part of aging. Yes, we are all going to lose some cognitive decline as we get older. Yes, we're going to walk in the room like I did today and say, what did I come in here for again, as I was getting everything together? That does not mean you have Alzheimer's or dementia. Dementia is the umbrella term. So if we think of like cancer, and then there's multiple types of cancer underneath there, dementia is the symptoms. The things that happen that affect memory, thinking, personality, functionality with daily tasks, things like that. Alzheimer's is the most common type of dementia. It accounts for about 60 to 80% of the total cases. There are other types. This crowd will know because I just did something for college not that long ago, and they don't know who Bruce Willis is. Frontotemporal lobe dementia is another type that falls underneath there. Robin Williams actually had Lewy bodies. Parkinson's, there are other things that fall under the dementia umbrella, with Alzheimer's being the most common. And then again, we've got about 6.7 million Americans living with Alzheimer's currently. And in North Carolina, that's about over 200,000. So anybody a Carolina Panther fan? Probably we're in Brunswick, nobody's from here, right? So, but that's the number I have the stadium from. You could fill the Panther Stadium, Bank of America Stadium, almost 3 times, or fill it twice and still have people in the fields outside of it on the streets. And that's still not enough to be able to show the number that it's impacted. And that obviously doesn't include those at risk and caregivers and our families. So, and moving into that, we're going to talk about the story of our health. I'm going to talk a little bit about genetics, family history, environment, and lifestyle, and then I'll turn it over to Rosalie. So genetics is something in family history that we can't change, right? I mean, we get what we get, and that's how it happens. I have dark hair and dark skin, olive skin, and my mom is 5 feet with blonde hair and blue eyes and light skin. So it doesn't necessarily mean that because something is in your family that you will receive that same health issue. I say it's like going to Vegas and gambling at the roulette table. You know, black or red, you don't know what you're going to get, right? So those are the things that we can't really control. They do have an impact, though. Family history, if we're talking a sibling or a parent, that's the kind of family history that directly affects your the ability or the risk factor in possibly developing Alzheimer's or a type of dementia. And when we're talking about genes, there's 2 kinds of genes: risk genes and deterministic genes. Deterministic genes, when we're talking about Alzheimer's, are very rare. We're talking about less than 1% of the total population. This means that you would be guaranteed to develop Alzheimer's, and it typically happens much younger, like in your 30s to 50s. Risk genes are just like in my family: cardiovascular, hypertension, diabetes, things like that, that yes, a lot of people in your family have had it, but there are steps that you can take and modifiable risk factors that you have, things that you can do in your lifestyle that would decrease that risk. And the gene that is being studied around that is the APOE4 gene, and it is kind of similar if we think about breast cancer. Some people do choose to have that testing done, and again, you may or may not have it, you may or may not make this choice, and having it doesn't always mean that you will get it. But that is the gene right now that we are looking at that would fall under this risk factor gene. And then environment and lifestyle. Environment, we're thinking air, water, climate, soil. Let's see, who moved here from somewhere that was cold?
Oh my.
So you're probably a little happier. You're able to get outside more. You're able to do lifestyle things because you're in a climate where it can change a little bit. Also, a lot of studies like on air pollution that can affect that. So things in your environment and then your lifestyle, which is everything we're talking about today, these are the pieces where you get to kind of take back control versus the genes or family history and make some changes to lower or decrease your risk as much as possible.
I feel like Brooke got to talk about ones that you don't necessarily have control over, and then I get to talk about the ones you do, which no one wants to talk about sometimes, right? Your blood pressure, your blood sugar, your weight, your cholesterol levels, those are all key to your overall health, including your brain, obviously. It's important to understand the numbers and the story that they do tell us. So, growing research suggests that many factors that increase the risk of heart disease and stroke may also increase the risk of cognitive decline and dementia. There is strong evidence of the connection between midlife high blood pressure and late life dementia. On the flip side, there's also strong evidence that controlling your blood pressure can have significant effect on kind of decreasing your risk, to the fact that researchers have found a 19% risk reduction of your MCI in those who manage their, I'm going to say it correctly, systolic blood pressure. Nearly 1 in 5 people saw a risk reduction. By reducing the risk of the MCI, we are potentially helping to reduce new cases of dementia. And studies have shown an increase in the risk of cognitive decline and possible dementia among those living with diabetes, although diabetes has not been proven to cause Alzheimer's. So it's no secret that Americans are getting larger. The increase between 2017 and 2020 was 41%. Researchers have found that midlife obesity may be associated with an increased risk as well. However, everyone in this room looks like they are active. And clearly, if you moved here from colder climates, you wanted it to be obviously more warm year-round. So I feel like this group is very active. I can tell a lot of you are outdoors a lot more. Hopefully you're out on the golf course, pickleball, tennis, a few of those. One day I saw my husband, he's an avid golfer, and I tell him one day I will take it up. And he always says to me, honey, the older you get, the harder it's going to be able to learn how to play it. So I then think about my own brain health and getting out there on the golf course. Another one is our cholesterol, and I love the commercial that talks about, cholesterol doesn't discriminate. It's one of those things, you can be as active, but some of that does come down to your diet. So being mindful of your good cholesterol and your bad cholesterol numbers. Just relatively speaking, Mayo Clinic, their recommendations is that your blood pressure to be average to normal is, anyone want to take a guess? I know you all are regularly getting your blood pressure checked. So what do you all feel like is the normal blood pressure? Yes, I did hear some 120/80. That will be correct. Your BMI, obviously, under 30 is recommended. Anything over 30 is considered to be at a higher risk for obesity. Your blood sugar levels, especially if some of you are pre-diabetic or diabetic, that is certainly a big factor, is less than 140 mgs is normal, between 140 and 199 is pre-diabetic, and then anything over 200 is diabetic. So below 200 is ideal, then the 200 to 239 borderline high, and then anything over 240 is high. You just said it like this? Oh, good. Okay. Now, we're going to have a little audience participation here. If you, relatively speaking, know how many hours of sleep you get, let's take a poll. If you think you're getting at least 7 to 8 hours of sleep, raise your hand. That's pretty good.
I gotta retire.
Okay, yes, I know, that is impressive. Okay, and then who thinks they are definitely getting more than 8 hours of sleep? Okay, that is impressive. That is really impressive. And then if you go to bed and wake up around the same time every day, raise your hand. Okay, that's pretty good. So restorative sleep is obviously one very important factor for your brain health, because, you know, as we're sleeping, a lot of things repair in your body. It's helpful to muscle recovery, just your brain in general being able to sleep. So if you are getting 7 to 8 hours of sleep or more, you are doing really well in this category, I have to say. I personally don't even get 7 hours of sleep on a usual, so that is very impressive. Also, you know, if you are waking and falling asleep around the same times, that's very helpful to your rhythmic clock, so that can help you have better sleep patterns as well if you are trying to improve that. But even just exposing yourself to the outdoors on a regular basis just can be helpful to the daylight association of your circadian rhythm to be able to have better sleep patterns. And then one thing that, as we all know, that shifts as you age is your sleep. That doesn't mean, you know, if you are now going to bed earlier and you might be waking up at 4 a.m., if you're still getting 7 to 8 hours of sleep, that's still means you really may be getting good quality sleep, just the pattern of when you fall asleep and wake up has changed. So, you know, if you are getting your basic 7 to 8 hours, then that really is normal and healthy as well. Okay. More tips on just getting better sleep if you are having a hard time with this. Obviously, decrease your caffeine intake, especially after lunchtime. If you are a smoker, try not to have any, or you're a tobacco chewer, no nicotine 4 to 6 hours before bed. Definitely restrict your fluids and your food intake 3 hours prior. But one of the biggest things, and I think we all with technology, and I'm guilty of this too, is I read on my phone at nighttime, and my husband always says to me, you have that little blue light thing on, but that's not helping your brain because it's still light from the phone, right? So I always suggest, if you're someone who likes to watch a show or read before bed, just put your phone away 30 minutes before you're ready to really fall asleep. I think that can be helpful to rest your mind. And some other suggestions, if we do have avid pet lovers like me and my 3 dogs, if your pet is disturbing your sleep, as hard as it is to break the habit, try not to have them in the bed with you. I'm not going to say don't have them in the room with you, but at least don't have them in the bed, because if they move around a lot, then you're a light sleeper, that is affecting your sleep. So try to keep those things in mind. Okay, and I think, yeah, back to you.
So I'll talk about the being smoke-free, but this is a pretty easy sentence to read. Smoking has a direct impact on the health of your brain. You can tell your grandkids. This also is going to include vaping. We'll throw that one out there too. It is the smoking that is bad for you. So what the science tells us. So smoking increases the risk of cognitive decline. So that, if you notice, it doesn't say may increase. It does increase the risk of cognitive decline. That does not mean dementia, mild cognitive impairment, Alzheimer's, but it does impact your brain health. And it may increase the risk of dementia. So in this second bullet, if you've got a smoker still in your family, definitely share this with them. Quitting smoking may reduce a person's chance of developing cognitive decline back to the level of a non-smoker. So you've got someone that maybe smoked for 20, 25 years and they quit. It is very likely, not guaranteed, that they went back to the same level that they went before they started smoking. And that's really what we're looking for in that part of that. It also, you know, if you don't smoke, what do? You reduce your risk of having a heart attack, having a stroke, you have better circulation, all of those lifestyle things, those modifiable risk factors that are related to the heart and brain connection. So tips to be smoke-free. obviously there's support through quit lines, the National Smokeout Day, Great American Smokeout Day, something like that's in November. So I've had a couple of people at programs before that took a long time for them to quit, and some of them shared like they kind of had to treat it like AA. Like they couldn't be around any smokers. She had to like switch to juice in the morning because coffee was kind of a trigger. So there are a lot of things that you might have to figure out for yourself if you do that. For my brother, he wanted to borrow some money from my mom several years ago, and I said, no, add up all those packs of cigarettes and you could have had all of that money in there. So, sometimes maybe the math might do it for somebody on a tip to quit smoking. And then we know not to smoke. That one's kind of a no-brainer, but some of those little pieces might be good to share with people in your family or friends. I love that now we've started talking more about mental health as just being part of our overall health. And it's important to prioritize yourself and make time for self-care. I mean, there is so many things around stress level. I mean, just think about your regular personality and your diet and your lifestyle. When you are stressed, is your sleep as good? Do you maybe go to Bojangles more than you normally would have because you're in a hurry? Do you just not relax, or you might skip some of those social or exercise things that you normally do with your friends because your stress level is, and you just feel it everywhere in your body. So all of those things, being stressed, anxiety, depression, they do affect your brain health. And so all these healthy habits that we're talking about actually directly contribute to good brain health. So when you think about this, what are some things I can enjoy? How do you build breaks into your day? How can I focus on self-care? You might have some more time at your stage to focus on self-care, because I'm striving to get there. But you're going to have family members. Maybe you see your daughter, your son really stressed and not taking time out for themselves. So you want to encourage it for them too, because self-care is not selfish. How many moms we have in the room are grandmoms? We know it's kind of like being on the plane. What do they tell you? Oxygen mask drops, you got to take it first. Same as being a caregiver. If your glass is empty instead of full, you have less to give to the person that you love. So it's really important to find some opportunities to focus on mental health, walk away for a few minutes, take your nap, read, whatever it is that you have to do that you enjoy doing, and kind of have that quick little reset a little bit. Oh, see, said take a nap. I think we're both up here thinking about sleeping a little bit. Go for a walk. Sometimes with my 8-year-old, we dance it out. We shake it off with Taylor Swift and do all those things. I hate baking, so that would give me anxiety and shoot my stress levels up. So I choose not to do that, but I love reading and doing the other things on there. So think about what is important to you and make sure you find some opportunities to carve things out on that and pass it along to the family members. That again, the oxygen mask reminder, and then keeping your glass empty or your glass full so that you have more to give everybody else.
All right, now we are going to talk about what you eat and how that is going to affect your brain health. So when you're thinking about things you're eating, we say in my house, trash in, trash out. Like, what is it? And I have teenage children. I have a 16-and-a-half-year-old and a 14-year-old. And I'm always saying to them, your diet is your diet. Eat certain things in moderation. But at their age, they really care about how they look. So I try to press upon them, if they want their skin to look nice, maybe let's drink more water, less soda. Think about eating your fruits and vegetables, not so many sugary foods. So those things can all be very helpful to our diets. But ultimately, there's not a specific diet that is shown or proven to improve your brain health. So studies have found that certain eating plans do help support your brain health. And I don't know if the video, if I try to play it, do you think it'll play?
I tried to link it and I couldn't get it.
So our link on this video really talks kind of about the Mediterranean diet, which, you know, is whole grains, lean meats, and then your fishes, your quinoa, vegetables, things of that nature that are very helpful. And then what do you eat as part of your brain health diet? If you are an avid vegetable lover, raise your hands. Okay, that's good. Broccoli, Brussels sprouts, they're my favorites. I have found that my children acted like they never liked broccoli, and then when they went to someone else's house or to their grandmother's house and it got prepared differently, all of a sudden they love broccoli. So then we try to prepare it in the ways they like it so I can get them to eat some broccoli. And fruits too, always in the summertime. That's one of the best things about living where we live, is just the access to fresh fruits and vegetables. And some of you all probably even have your own gardens. It's a great activity for your physical health and your mental health, especially for self-care for avid gardeners. Get out there, and I've started doing yard work, I think, sometimes to feel a sense of self-care, to feel like I'm contributing, but also just for some clarity, to be out there digging in the dirt, right? So again, eating less meat and sweets, obviously. It's great being on the coast. Hopefully you all love seafood, so you're getting more fish in your diets if you live on the coast. Nuts are great too. I'm a big fan of almonds and walnuts, but apparently you have to eat those in moderation. And shockingly, with your leafy greens like kale and spinach and your nuts, you have to be careful too of kidney stones. So some people might experience that. So those are some foods, if you eat them a lot, can cause people to have kidney stones. I actually have friends who have had kidney stones due to almonds and kale. So those ones can be moderation for sure. Making sure you're getting your beans in there. Again, some quinoa is great for your grains. Leafy vegetables, and then your healthy fats. And I'm a huge avocado eater, so that does fall with your healthy fats there, along with olive oil. It's a great alternative to cook with as well. Then again, here's our Mediterranean diet. The DASH is our dietary approaches to stop hypertension. And then the MIND diet, we have Mediterranean intervention for neurodivergent delay, which in that particular diet has actually helped with your, let me find it in my notes, hold on. I know I had seen it earlier. Here we go. With the MIND diet, it is getting all of our things we've discussed, your fruits, your vegetables, your grains, so you're not necessarily having to think about what you're eating if you already kind of have that incorporated into your lifestyle. And then one big thing is dietary fibers. So there are two types. We have our soluble and insoluble fibers, and the benefits of those, having the fiber does reduce your risk of heart disease and your type 2 diabetes. Also, the fiber is mostly in our fruits and vegetables and whole grains. So if you're already eating them, then that you're benefiting from your fiber. The soluble fibers are things that are dissolved in water and can help lower your glucose levels and your blood cholesterol. So foods that are soluble include oatmeal, nuts, beans, lentils, apples, and blueberries. And then your insoluble fibers do help things move through your digestion system, and they do prevent constipation, which is important. So those foods include wheat, whole wheat bread, grains like couscous, brown rice, carrots, cucumbers, and tomatoes. And examples of what that looks like if you are eating your fiber regularly. Let's say you love the black-eyed peas. That's 11 grams of fiber A cup of tomatoes is 6.6 grams. A cup of almonds is 16 grams, which that's a pretty big amount of fiber. 1 cup of quinoa is 9.3 grams, and then blackberries are 7.5 grams. Okay. And what about our sugars? Our good friend sugar. And I have a sweet tooth. I've always had a sweet tooth. So I have to be careful because I could eat like chocolate every day, ice cream every day. I mean, we always have ice cream in our house because my husband is an avid ice cream eater as well. But our sugars, really have to be mindful about our sugars because they are not good for our brains a lot. So I'm not going to tell you don't eat sugar because I love my sugar. But I don't drink soft drinks. I am very good about if I know I'm going to eat anything sugar related, it is not going to be a soda. I will prefer to have my calories in a sweet treat most days. So I don't drink soda. I usually stick to my coffee and my water. Limit your added sugars. It's amazing how many things have added sugar in them. That's why it is important to read your food labels. Obviously, eating less processed foods is going to also lower the chance that you have a lot of added sugar in your diet. And for those of you who take chewable vitamins, they do have sugar in them. So you might want to see when you're thinking about how much sugar you eat on a regular, if your vitamins, if they're chewable, do have, in fact have sugar in them. And avoiding that low blood sugar levels in your brain. You know, if you're dizzy, irritable, lethargic, then you may have some low blood sugar. And it might help if you eat a piece of fruit, something natural sugars versus a candy bar per se, right? Okay, and we did talk about our fibers. But as you see, daily for women is 25 grams, and for men it's 35 grams. And I would challenge you, if you don't know how much you're actually getting on a regular basis, just start writing down what you're eating, and then you have a better idea if you are really getting a balanced diet and you are getting enough fruits, vegetables, grains. It is helpful because even myself, I can forget what I ate. Like, I have to sit here and think about it. I'm so busy running around, like, did I eat lunch today? What did I have for breakfast? Did I eat breakfast? So it is helpful if you just track what you're eating. And then you also have an idea of maybe what you need to be adding into your diet too. If you're not getting enough grains, fiber, vegetables, then you can start incorporating those in your diet. I would also challenge you that if you don't like a particular thing, like I do not like beets, but I want to like beets. And so I have tried eating them with different things, pairing them with different foods, and I have found that it actually does change how the beets taste. I don't think I will ever like just eating plain beets, but mixed with spinach, a little bit of goat cheese, some other things, actually makes the beets taste better. So I would challenge you to even find different ways to cook your fruits and vegetables to get that more regularly in your diet. And of course, supplements. Now, I'm not going to tell you don't do a supplement. I'm just going to tell you that if you are eating these things regularly in your diet, you may not need a supplement. But of course, I'm not your primary care provider, so if you're taking supplements, you may just want to check in with your healthcare provider and make sure that, you know, yes, you need a supplement if you're not getting enough iron or you're not getting enough fiber. But just keep that in mind because really are all whole natural foods. If you are getting them, you don't always have to be taking the supplement. So your body's going to absorb it better in the natural foods versus a pill form of the supplement. And I think, Barbara, did I give you this one? Yes. Okay, so this worksheet, Barbara does have it on the table over there as well. But just something to consider when you're thinking about supplements and that kind of thing. Do you really need it? And if you're tracking your diet and you're getting enough, then you probably don't need the supplement.
So supplements can really have an adverse effect with your prescribed medication, especially blood thinners and cancer medication. So that's another reason to look into them. She mentioned counting your sugars if you're having the gummies. You know, a lot of people are having the fiber ones, so instead of having the actual fiber. So then we've got more sugar with the fiber ones. And then check for warning labels. In the beginning, I mentioned that gold standard, and on a lot of supplements we see not FDA approved. And that's because they haven't gone through all of the steps to be able to check off on it, to call it a medical food, or to kind of hit that gold standard. You don't know if it says 50% of the people lost 10 pounds. How much is 50% of the people? We're talking about 50 people, 100 people, 500 people? How long did you study them for? 30 days? What else did they do with exercise with it? So you got to be really careful in reading those labels for all of those reasons. The interaction with your prescribed drugs, actually wanting to have food and nutrients, not taking more of a supplement. We live here, and I've had the blood work that shows me that I need vitamin D, which is crazy because I love being outside, but it's not very uncommon. So some people start taking some of these supplements because their friend took it, or you read an article, or anything like that. But without having your levels checked, you may not need it, and you may be causing more harm than good on taking something that is affecting the levels that you already have in the prescribed medication. So next one we're going to talk about is get moving. Physical activity can improve brain health. In fact, at the association, out of all of these 7 lifestyle habits, there's so much positive research on exercise and movement that if we had to recommend one thing for you to try to work on, it's exercise and it's movement, because there are so many proven benefits and researches around that research. So consistent cardiovascular activity will reduce your risk of cognitive decline. It may directly benefit brain cells and reduce other risk factors. So if we talked about that heart and brain connection, when you get that heart pumping, it's able to nourish your brain at a better level than when you're more sedentary. And for most people, any increase in movement can have an impact on health. So where do we run into, all of the things we see on TV and read? Can we just walk for 10 minutes a day? Can we do yoga? Or should we be out there and having consistent, more vigorous exercise? And the preferred thing is about 150 minutes a week of exercise more on the vigorous side. So think about your 30-minute brisk walks adding up to that. It doesn't mean that those other types of exercises, or you may have an injury so you shouldn't do something at that time, it doesn't mean that they won't have benefit. Overall, if you're moving, that's a benefit. It's just saying that the research affecting cognitive decline and heart health is better as it relates to more vigorous exercise. So if you're having that's my next slide before I get ahead. So let's see, we'll do the raise of hands. And I won't make anybody say never, we'll skip that one. Does anybody get consistent, vigorous, on the vigorous side, exercise 1 to 3 times a week? So tennis, pickleball, walking, swimming, things like that. Good. Oh, I did never twice. That was another one. Need to check mine there as well too. But overall, does everybody feel like you get some sort of movement every day? A little bit. Okay, good. So when we're thinking about that, we're thinking about, what activities do you want to try, how to build in more physical activity into the day, who to ask to join me. So if you're having a hard time getting that vigorous exercise in, so you get up in the morning and you walk the dog. So walk for 10 minutes and see how far you get. And then the next week, walk for 10 minutes and see if you can keep going a little bit further. And then at lunch or in the mid-afternoon, you take your other walk and try the same thing. Maybe you're doing this one more of a social activity, or I know, living in COVID, I had to get, we're all at home, and you had to get out of the house and just move around and get that activity in there a little bit. And then maybe in the evening, it's you or you and a neighbor and a spouse, And then you do the same walk around the neighborhood. You can be the HOA spies, who needs to cut their grass, who's breaking the rules, who's putting their house up for sale. So we've just moved in the 30 minutes that we need, and then we've had the goal. We're going to do 10 minutes, and we broke it up so it's pretty easy, and then challenge ourselves to get a little bit further each time in what we can do in that amount of time. So that's just a kind of simple way to fit that in a little bit. What activities do you want to try? Who can I ask to join me? I hate working out with other people, like the actual workout. Now, like a fun game or activity or walk, that's fine. But when I go to the gym and I don't want to go with anybody else, I don't want that commitment of you meeting me there and forcing me to be there, which I do work out most days a week. But what if I'm running late or I can't always commit to this certain time? But for other people, that accountability factor is much better.
Brooke and I are opposites. If I don't have somebody to go work out with, I'm not going. So I need the accountability.
It's the same thing. I have a friend that signed up for Orange Theory Fitness. Anybody heard of that? And if you sign up for the class and you no-show, they charge you money. So that's an incentive. And I'm like, well, you know, I don't want to do that. That does nothing. That's really just going to make me angry, and it's going to not make me want to do it. And then you got to think about the activities that you want to try. I'm going to say ladies. It doesn't mean men haven't tried it, but or we'll say that. Anybody try a spin class or like mountain biking before? I hate it. It hurts. I mean, it hurts your butt. And then when you're in spin class, the lights are out, everybody's real gross and sweaty, and you're pedaling and you're not going anywhere. So if my only option to get this exercise was to do spin class, I wouldn't do it. So you got to pick things that you enjoy and things that you'll do. It doesn't matter if research or the news or so-and-so says, oh, you got to do this, you got to do it this for this, you got to do HIIT training, interval training. You're not going to do it if you don't like it. So find something that you like to do and do that, because that is going to give you more of that consistent piece than something that you don't like to do. So tips for getting physically active. We already talked about being the HOA spies and walking around the neighborhood, taking the stairs more often if you can. You know, in Wilmington, oh my God, the Target parking lot is the worst. I don't even bother trying to park anywhere near there. I just park all the way in the back and walk up there because it's such a nightmare trying to find a parking spot, and I don't think the aisles are built wide enough anyway. So look for those opportunities to park a little bit, not like, and my full disclosure, my mom knows I pick on her a lot in a lot of these. Don't drive around the parking lot 10 times trying to get a closer spot when you can just park and walk up and add up those steps. So if you've got your phone or your tracker, you know, if you're goal-oriented, maybe counting those steps works for you. Start small. Again, think about an injury if you need to be able to do that. Finding those 10-minute pockets of things, that's great to be able to do that. And, you know, try something fun. You know, we keep talking about pickleball, and it does look really fun, and I'm waiting for somebody to invite me to play so I can learn how to play it. So that would be fun for me, but like a dance class, which was what my mom likes to do, that sounds miserable, and I don't want to do that. So find something that you're interested in doing and find somebody else, or do it alone. And again, those things that you like will allow you to be more consistent.
Empowering, at AARP, we really do want to empower you to take control of your brain health. So staying sharp is one of our resources. I'm not here to sell you a membership. That's not part of my job. All of our resources for AARP are free. So you can always check out some of these things online. One of the things that I will tell you about staying sharp is that, and I didn't mean to go ahead and skip on the next slide, but that's okay. When you think about staying sharp, it is, there can be, you know, there are brain games that you can play. There's not anything proven that's saying that the brain games do help you like stay more sharp. I mean, quite honestly, I'm gonna admit that one of my self-care things is to binge watch TV shows on Netflix. So when Brooke and I started working together, I took our like there is a quiz you can take on our website to kind of determine what your like brain health is. And I told Brooke, I was like, I'm really kind of disappointed. Like, I felt like at my age, mine was going to be a lot better. And so then it challenged me to think about, oh, I really do need to pick a book up. It really is so much better to just read a book versus mindlessly watching a show. And I try to think to myself, especially for those of you all that are mothers, when you think back about running your household and all the things that your brain has to think about with time management, I'm like, yes, I'm challenging myself. I do all these schedules for people in my house, and then I'll start working with Brooke and come to find out women are at more risk for Alzheimer's. I was like, how is that fair? I feel like I'm using my brain all the time. So when you're taking care of your mental health, you know, COVID really did bring out a lot of mental health issues. I think it was the first time that our country really did look at mental health and what does that mean, because mental health is health. As a social worker, I will tell you we all need to have good mental health, but that comes along with self-care. And self-care does look differently for everyone. You know, self-care might mean, yes, you do go for your morning walk because that is your time to yourself. Or it might mean someone needs 10 minutes to sit and not be bothered, to just breathe and decompress. It could mean you take a bath, or you have your glass of wine on your front porch at night at the same time, or you visit with your neighbor. Just good, healthy habits, because again, and I'm sure a lot of you all are at a point in your life where you are caregivers. Caregivers is stressful. It's 24/7. You don't get a break all the time from being a caregiver. So finding ways to get 5 to 10 minutes of just your own respite of self-care. I know it can be very challenging when you are a caregiver. That sometimes feels like it's a luxury to get to have time to yourself. But if you aren't filling your cup, then you're also not able to fill the cup of the person that you love and you want to take care of. So remember those kind of things when you think about your mental health. It is important. And you know, if you're stressed and your cortisol levels are high, you're not getting good sleep, you're probably going to be more tempted to eat sugar. I know I am. So it does, all those things contribute to all the other things, like just like physical activity is a crucial, important piece too, but that, you know, physical activity is self-care as well. I think sometimes people forget, oh right, getting exercise, that could be my time to myself every day is when I get up and go work out. Now, that's also my time to socialize with my friends, unlike Brooke, who wants to work out by herself. So keep those things in mind. Then, you know, tips that may help you with focus. Establish a routine. I feel like at y'all's time in life, you probably had a routine for so long and you're like, yes, I get to retire and do whatever I want. But then it is like figuring out what you're doing with your time. So I feel like, as Barbara said, this group for volunteering is a great way to establish a routine. Pay attention. Now, I'm going to just say avoid multitasking. I am an avid multitasker. It is my number one thing. Now, everyone in my family will probably tell you I'm not very good at it because I'm always doing it. But I will say, in order to pay better attention, I have to stop multitasking so much, because then I miss little detailed things. So I think that comes along with, if you are always multitasking, you likely are not giving things your full attention. Take breaks. I like to go sit outside in the sun, you know, 5 to 10 minutes at a time just during the day, especially if it's been a stressful day, or take my dog for a walk, 2 of them. I had 1 dog when COVID started. Now I have 3, if that tells you anything. But I'm going to tell you, when it was just my 1 dog, he was living his best life because we would go walk multiple times a day. Use calendars, reminders, and alarms. And that can be for any different task in, you know, within your routine in life. Like, my husband has to set alarms to take, medication sometimes, or if I know I need to make sure that my teenage children are getting out the door on time, then I set an alarm if I'm at the gym when I know they need to be up and text, "Are you up?" Respond, so I know you're going to get to school on time, right? Those kind of things, and calendars are helpful. I live with my calendar on my phone. My mom, who's almost 80, still has her calendar that she writes everything on. But I almost died when I had to get a new phone and my calendar didn't transfer. And your dentist appointment, you have to schedule 6 months in advance, or your regular yearly appointments. I was like, oh my gosh, I don't know when it is. I was having to call my dentist, my eye doctor. So I'm an avid person for a calendar. And then I think the debunking is over there as well, about the aging brain. So some facts about this, and also, what number slide is this? 35. Okay, making sure. You know what? I didn't have that one on mine. Are debunking our brain health. Neurons are continually created throughout your life in areas of the brain through a process called neurogenesis. Okay, so that doesn't mean you're going to be all the neurons you're ever going to get is when you were born. And if you're a lifelong learner, then that's just a proven fact too. Like, you're constantly, regenerating new things. Again, you can't learn new things as you age. Clearly not true. Learning can happen at any age, and as like Brooke said, try something new. Some great things to do, or take a class. I know Ollie is a big program that they have at UNCW. It's the older learning. Do you remember?
Tight on time.
Oh, we are tight on time. Okay, this happens to be over there. There are a few, there's about 7 of those. So if you wanted to learn more about these, we do have the worksheet on that. So I'll just skip through.
I think it's OSHA Lifelong Learning.
Yes, OSHA Lifelong Learning. Ollie, yes.
And we're going to skip this part again for sake of time, but this is one of those cognitive games. How many words can you make in so many minutes? And there's a whole number. It does kind of pull into different languages, but the rules are, treat it like Scrabble. So like A and like those words don't count. But I enjoy doing these with the whiteboard with my husband because it's one of the only things that I can beat him in. But those little games keep popping up on Instagram where you can play, word teacher. How many words can you make out of the word teacher? So that was just kind of a quick cognitive example of an activity to do with that. Staying connected, yes, social engagement is good for your brain health. I mean, if COVID in 2020 didn't teach us that isolation, we are meant to be around people. Even the most introverted person needs to have connection. So staying socially active may support brain health. And there's a lot of research that says, people who regularly engage with other people tend to have reduced rates of mortality. Those connections, those things that are happening in the brain with the pathways, like creating friendships, those are all getting sparked, and they're moving in the pathway. So that's why part of the reason when we're talking about the social engagement piece, it's associated with living longer. If we think about being well connected to healthier choices in the area, if we're in a supper club and everybody's eating grilled chicken, you don't want to be the one that came in with the ice cream that she came in. So you probably are going to make some healthier choices based around some of your social connections as well too. And again, St. James Nest, great way to stay active and volunteer. You can definitely volunteer with either one of our organizations, be involved with the community, clubs and things that you would want to join, volunteer for a cause that's important to you. I'll give a shout out while we have time to Joanne. If she plans around here in St. James, has a walk team and does a walk to help raise funds. What's the name of the team again? I Don't Want to Forget. So another great way to put your passion into lifestyle activities. Visiting friends and family. This even comes in, as much as we were all like zoomed out, it's nice to have that technology to FaceTime somebody that you don't live near and have that, at least that connection that way versus calling on the phone or writing a letter sometimes. And then in wrapping up with the activities, and of course, don't remember those yet. And cognitive activity, it's just a fancy way for saying keeping your brain engaged. Yes, we want to binge watch a Netflix series sometimes, but not all the time, but it's always about looking at the challenge. I'm a big beach read girl. I like these really horrible murder mysteries, and then light reads like Ellen Hildenbrand. So I have to challenge myself to read these bigger books or more maybe nonfiction books, things like that, versus doing the same old thing that you do. Yes, I love doing puzzles, but doing the 500-piece puzzle from the Dollar Tree probably isn't cutting it all the time. You need to look for some opportunities to advance. If you are interested in distressing furniture, you might buy a piece of furniture and strip it or paint it. And then you start to learn how to do all of the fancy things with the oils and the rags, and you start changing out hardware and doing all those things. You're advancing your skill level for something that you like and not just staying on the same path. Those are the opportunities that really get the brain going and best protect your brain health. So really quick, I like to share a little bit of the research. AAIC is the Alzheimer's Association International Conference, and it is the world's largest community forum in the dementia research community. So these things on the bottom are things that came out recently. We just talked about fiber. This one freaked me out. Constipation associated with cognitive aging and decline. So we're talking about one bowel movement every 3 days or more could signal a worsening condition. So people who are chronically constipated, that could equal up to 3 years of aging. And I'll provide the links where you can dig into a little bit more around it. But it's all kind of going back to, while we're talking about brain health, we've heard a lot about gut health. So that kind of ties into it, where everything is a machine in our body, and they all interconnect to be able to have those healthy brains. Hearing aids slow cognitive decline in older adults, and then blah, blah, all of that. Hearing is the number one most, make sure I get this right, is the number one most preventable way to decrease your risk for Alzheimer's or for dementia. Hearing loss and vision loss are associated to falls. It's like Fall Prevention Week sometime this month. Falls can lead to...
Next week, I think.
Next week. Falls can lead to traumatic brain injury. Anybody that has Alzheimer's or dementia, those falls can really set them back and where they are living with that. But hearing aids are really something that we can do that would really lower our risk for increasing dementia. And so a lot of that goes to the study found, and again, I'll share the links that you can get in there, that using hearing aids, and we're talking about the 60 to 79 range, can cut 3 years of cognitive decline off of you. So that struggle to hear, just like the struggle for vision, affects your brain health in it as well too. So if you have any concerns about that, definitely maybe talk to your PCP about that. We are getting along in the finger prick test. I remember, going to the pediatrician, they would do the finger. It is nowhere near ready, available, probably 5 to 8 years out from something like that. But a lot talking about Alzheimer's and brain health, and then considering where we are and actually getting to a neurologist, by the time you see signs, and then by the time you can get into the specialist, it could be a little bit further if you've got this or even mild cognitive impairment. So what do we need? We need answers a little bit sooner so we can get some of these treatments and get some of these therapies and get a plan in place a little bit sooner. So there are... A blood test was more than 80% accurate in identifying Alzheimer's-related changes. And again, not anywhere close to this being mainstream in the market, but there's a lot of studies that are going on versus doctors that were able to use this and then doctors that didn't have it. Right now, all those clinical trials that are going on, like lecanemab that's just come off, they are incorporating this in some of the work that they're doing. There's more drugs that are coming out soon that are in the pipeline that are really kind of helping with that amyloid buildup and that biomarker monitoring. All words, I can't tell you exactly what they are. So again, I'll share the link, but you can dive into it a little bit deeply. But just know that we are trying to get to, while we may not be closer to a cure, we're getting towards things that can slow it or that can give us that more accurate, faster diagnosis. And then volunteering late in life may protect the brain. So there's a lot of research around that, and goes back to that cognitive and social involvement. And there are some other things that are on the website. One quick thing I did want to point out, there is something called the U.S. Pointer Study, and it is the largest study of its kind ever done with that. And it's a 2-year clinical trial where we take about 2,000 people across the country, ages 60 to 79, who already have an increased risk for developing Alzheimer's or dementia. So we're talking women, minorities, family history, genetics, lifestyle, like cardiovascular. And then we're putting them in that randomized trial, the gold standard. Some are doing kind of like a self-prescribed lifestyle things, and it'll list out, eating, diet, all these things, while others follow a very structured plan and meeting with people. So the first cohort actually was at Wake Forest. That is actually wrapping up. We're graduating some of those people today. So we're still a few years away from it. But what this would say is basically what your doctors tell you. The healthier you are, the longer you can live, and the heart and the brain connection can reduce your risk of cognitive decline. But then this kind of can give us some more of those specifics. What kind of exercise? How long? Like, is this self-prescribed here? Here's what we suggest you do, and that accountability factor versus this is what you're actually doing and you're getting checked in. So we'll have those numbers coming out soon. But again, it is the largest study of its kind that will directly correlate aging, already having a risk for cognitive decline, and healthy aging, modifiable risk factors. All right, do we remember 3 photos from the beginning? What are they? Cool, everybody gets an A. Your brain health is good. We'll feel good about going from that. And again, sake of time, we'll scroll through these. And then, are you okay if we just take the questions for that?
Yeah, I'm fine.
Both our organizations offer tons of resources if you have any questions or need anything specific related to that. And then we'll answer whatever questions you have with the time we have left. Thank you.
Thank you. I'd like to start with a question, but first I want to say, anyone who wants to speak and ask questions must speak into the microphone. I'm the bossy Vanna. Okay, so first I'd like to ask a question. That is, you mentioned earlier about cholesterol being, a high cholesterol being, so if you're taking a statin, does that help?
Lower.
Lower? I mean, I know it helps it lower cholesterol, but does it also help lower your risk, or is that like?
I mean, I think, general rule of thumb, I think if your cholesterol is coming down and your numbers are lower, then that is going to be helpful to your overall health. I don't know that there's anything specific that they found that's like, yes, if you take this particular thing and it comes down. I think in general, just reducing your number is going to help.
Gotcha. Okay.
Exactly.
Let's start here.
Hi. Very interesting presentations. The question that I have is that I have a family history of Alzheimer's. Mother, grandmother, aunt. 5 women in my family with Alzheimer's. So that's why I'm interested in whether or not there's any kind of testing there that you can determine if you have, say, I have any of those risk factors. Does that make sense?
Yes. So, and I will say that the research for our African American people of color is lower. There's predominantly a lot more research for our white counterparts. So that ultimately Dr. Goldie Bird, she is with Wake Forest Medical. There are 9 other universities in the country that have partnered to do research specific to African American families, specifically if you have 2 or more family members with it. I will give you my card, and then I can put you, we've done a lot of work with Dr. Goldie Hawn, so I can put you in touch because they really are trying to find, particularly in people of color, families that have 2 or more relatives that have had Alzheimer's for research purposes.
One quick question about that as well, because I did speak to somebody in Wake Forest, this was maybe a year or so ago, and my concern was, would we have to travel there in terms of the meetings? And so they couldn't give me a definitive answer about that at the time, but I would be interested in participating in any kind of studies or research or anything like that because of my family history.
I don't know about the travel. I do know what is the registry, the brain health registry?
There's a North Carolina registry for brain health, which only does brain health research, whether it's preventative, cures, all of that, only in North Carolina. So if you go to that website and create a profile, I've done that, and all they do is send me a quarterly newsletter, but you can opt in for more information about specific trials. And again, it's only related to brain health research around in there. And there is genetic testing for it. Not anything readily available here, the closest I've seen in Raleigh, but it's not as widespread as, say, like, testing for breast cancer, but it is available to test for that gene, that APE04 gene, to see if you would have a carrier for that. And I'll give you my card.
Hi there, and in relation to your question, my husband had it done. I just want you to make sure your insurance covers it, because ours didn't, and it's about $1,000. But they did find out that he was APOE3 on both sides, which he has. That means he is at a normal risk. The 4-4 is at increased risk, correct? Okay, thank you.
And that APE04, studies have found that about 40% of people with Alzheimer's have had this gene. And again, you're looking at, is this gene coming from one side or for two sides? So again, going back to the roulette table, and like counting cards, it's no guarantee. It is just knowing your risk that's in there. That's all it is.
I know they've made advances in medication to slow down. Can you talk about what is currently out there now? My aunt had it, and she was taking several medications, but I understand they've come a long way.
We have the latest drug that has been out there is called lecanemab. And the thing that we get back to this brain health and the detection and the diagnosis is that right now it is slowing it down for the early stage, mild cognitive impairment, early stage only. So it's giving you about 27% more time. So that's more time to travel, to make plans, to go to a granddaughter's wedding, things like that. It's not stopping it, but it's the first one that's getting into the brain and affecting the plaques and the tangles and the biomarkers that are in there. Couple of things that are involved with that. So one, you got to have a diagnosis. Two, you got to have the PET scan or the MRI to be able to show, because you can see that in the brain where the spots are in there. And then three, the cost. So if we think back into like the early 1980s when cancer drugs, when chemo just started coming out, and it's an intravenous drug, you would have to travel somewhere and sit there and be able to get it and come back again. So this drug has been the first one that the FDA approved, but then CMS, which is Center for Medicaid and Medicare, didn't approve it. It's taken a year, and they finally have just checkmarked it. So a couple factors around that is basically all of our private pay insurances follow them, United, Blue Cross, Blue Shield. Well, if Medicare, Medicaid's not going to cover it, they're not going to cover it. The veterans were covering it, though, actually, for a little bit. And then you're going to think about what are the costs associated. So if we think about rural areas tend to use Medicaid and Medicare more frequently. How are we going to travel then to the place? Because it's going to not every hospital, it's not a pill. You're going to have to go in there and be able to take the IV, and it's intravenous, and then it's expensive. It's about like $25,000 or $30,000 a year. So there's a lot of factors that come in that. But already when you go back to that AAIC, there's already another drug coming down the pipeline and helping slow it. So the good news is we're getting there. Look how much further that we've come from before, when we had no idea, no even notion of a finger prick, no sort of drug. So again, it's not anything that I think is going to be widely available. Hospitals are going to have to learn how to use it. They're going to have to go through their own insurance coverages and liabilities too. But it's progress, because without progress, we're going to be stuck.
I have just one more quick question. On average, is there such a thing as an average time that you live with Alzheimer's? 1 year, 5 years, 10 years?
4 to 8. After diagnosis, 4 to 8. It's not unheard of to go 20 years, but typically it's 4 to 8.
I just wanted to say that my mom just passed away, and she had Alzheimer's for 15
so
years.
sorry. Oh, wow.
15 years, and
That's so difficult.
and she was on high blood pressure medication. She also took cholesterol medication. She did, she always was running up and down the stairs because there's 5 kids. She was in good shape. She wasn't heavy, but she lasted longer than anyone I know. Mm-hmm. And she suffered greatly from it. I just worry about myself, but I don't think I want to take a test. I don't want to know.
Absolutely. And then just having women are 2/3 more likely, or well, 1/3. Out of 6.7 million Americans living with the disease, 2/3 are women. So all of those factors and what we talked about with those large populations, and my great uncle, the scoundrel that ate fried chicken and smoked cigars and bourbon but outlived everybody else in the family. Sometimes you can do all the right things and it doesn't always happen, but 15 years is a really long time. Absolutely.
And the question about high cholesterol, I have high cholesterol, but I don't take statins because I had read some studies that statins can actually increase your risk for Alzheimer's. I don't know if that's true or not, because it does something with the fat in the brain. The brain needs the fat, and then it takes. So I don't want to mimic my mom. I don't want to.
Right.
I'm trying not to do. She took a lot of medication, and she had migraines. Mm-hmm. She took migraine medication. I get migraine, so I'm trying to not follow what she did, because I don't.
And there is a lot of going around with that too. Like, obviously, it's just like taking the fiber gummy. Is it better to get your fiber through the best foods and the healthiest lifestyle versus the Fiber One gummy that I used to take but I don't take anymore? Same thing, similar with medication, but again, we're not healthcare providers, and your doctor would know your family history and your current, testing and your blood levels and things like that. But overall, if you can do it in the most natural way with the least amount of medication, that's always the preferred way to be able to maintain your numbers.
All right, thank you.
I want to remind everybody that we've got a program in November, and Brooke's going to be the person speaking about understanding an Alzheimer's designation or diagnosis. So just a reminder that she's going to be back and have more information on this.
And that one does not come with as much humor. I keep the humor more in these two, so bring your tough questions for that one.
2 questions. One, are there any natural products or natural things that we can do without medication that will have any impact on cognitive dysfunction? And the second thing is that there are several medications that lead to cognitive dysfunction, and I'm an example of that. I have a sleep and insomnia problem, and I had been on Elavil for about 4 years, and I had the Mars test a year ago, and they said I have mild cognitive dysfunction. So there's, when you're taking your medications, they talk about side effects. Many times they will tell you it might have an effect on your cognitive dysfunction. I didn't realize that. Obviously, I went off of the Elavil after being on it for insomnia for so long. So,
and mild cognitive impairment doesn't necessarily mean you will develop Alzheimer's and dementia. You can still, do most of your daily tasks around those. And then as far as what the association says, there's no food, supplement, anything like that, like we and AARP, that we don't stand with Prevagen, you know, we've got a whole page, and I can share that as well too, around kind of like alternative therapies. And I'm not knocking that, because there's a lot of things that I do to avoid taking medication too. But if you're doing it for the sole goal of preserving your brain health or slowing your cognitive decline, there's just not that magic pill. I mean, we'll go back to the 90s infomercial ladies, you lose 10 pounds over a week. Yeah, because you pooped and peed it all out and then it came right back on. So there is no single thing that can do that, unfortunately. But again, check with your healthcare provider. They may have a reason for wanting you to be able to take something. And there are a lot of medications that can cause some cognitive decline that make people think that maybe Alzheimer's or dementia. It doesn't necessarily have to be that. That is a side effect for some things not even related to that.
I just wanted to know, you hear the commercials all the time for Prevagen. Is that something that works, or do they know whether it works, or is it bogus?
Both the association and AARP don't recommend it, but we tell you to go and speak with your hospital or speak with your healthcare provider about it.
And sometimes your pharmacist actually can give you a lot of good information on your medications. I think it's good. I will say I think it's good if you are on certain medications that your primary care provider, even your primary care provider or your other doctors, know what they are, because a lot of times our doctors aren't keeping up with our health chart, and if you are seeing multiple doctors, they may not be aware of it. So it's always good to be mindful of that and have that information with you. But my own pharmacist, she, they are always really good. If they know I'm on a particular medication and I've started one recently, my pharmacist said, hey, just want to make you aware that if you're taking this particular medication, you need to have so many hours in between taking this other medication. So sometimes your pharmacist can also be someone who is good to ask about those things as well.
This is a really simple one, I think. The 7 to 8 hours of sleep a night. Are naps useful in meeting that?
So as long as they're not too long. So it's 30 minutes, right, that we want to keep a nap.
Really?
So anything longer than that kind of starts to disrupt your sleep. And if you're like me and you have the anxiety, then the stress of knowing I can only sleep for 30 minutes means I'll never go to sleep. But so keep your naps short. Rest your eyes. That's what my mom says she's doing.
Any other questions before we wrap it up? First of all, thanks again to Brooke and to Rosalie.
Thank you.